Hey guys, it's me, Buster Green again, and I am back with another movie review, and today I'm reviewing DreamWorks' latest animated movie, Ruby Gillman. Now, Ruby Gillman was not as bad as I've heard, but I wouldn't say it was perfect either. Honestly, I gotta be really careful listening to advice from people on YouTube because there's a lot of nut jobs out there who'll just hate on any movie just because it has a female main character or an original plot or whatever. And with that out of the way, please listen to what I'm trying to say on YouTube. Now, this movie is by all means not perfect, not even close, but I do think it is a very interesting piece of media to wrap your brain around and consider, especially in the hellscape landscape of 2023, and when you place it in DreamWorks' wider personal history. So filling in the backstory here, if you're not familiar with DreamWorks famously started out as a competitor to Disney, founded by Steven Spielberg and ejected former CEO of Disney, Jeffrey Katzenberg. Now, at first, DreamWorks would make films that were directly derivative of what Disney was doing. Like, for example, when Disney came out with Aladdin, DreamWorks came out with the slightly more historical, slightly more religious Prince of Egypt. DreamWorks eventually found their footing by doing films, however, that were not competing with Disney, but rather making fun of Disney, lampooning them, striking back at them, and the first film that really did this was Shrek. Shrek was pretty much a 2-hour movie where Mike Myers stood as a big green guy and told all these insulting fart jokes about how stupid Disney was for using classic public domain storybook characters, which they have been doing for decades to just fill out their roster of movies. Now back to Ruby Gillman. Ruby Gillman seems to be following that long tradition of sticking it to Disney, just like Shrek. However, just like Prince of Egypt, they are also very derivative of Disney. And that being said, Ruby Gillman is so derivative of the most recent Disney movies, but it also takes some shots at them like Shrek did. Like, see, if Shrek was a commentary on the classic history of Disney, everything from the 1930s to the 1990s, Ruby Gillman is this weird, hyper-specific commentary on the Disney movies released in the past 3 years, specifically 2021 to 2023. In short, Ruby Gillman is almost like this insane remix parody of 2021's Luca, 2022's Turning Red, and 2023's live-action Little Mermaid. Although really the movie isn't aware of that film and it's actually making fun of the white-skinned, red-haired original from the 1980s. But nonetheless, it came out directly at the same time as the Little Mermaid remake and was poised as a competitor to it. Trailers even directly leaned into the rivalry between the two movies, especially with Ruby's Mermaids Are Evil campaign, which kind of is what the movie is about, but on some other level it was some corporate meta warfare baked directly into the core of the film. But yeah, this would not be the first time a DreamWorks film and a Disney film went head-to-head. The first DreamWorks movie ever was Ants, that released at the same time as A Bug's Life, and infamously they also made Shark Tale starring Will Smith just slightly after Finding Nemo, and because it came last, it didn't do as good. Now, Ruby Gillman continues that tradition, and it's really weird. Like, to recap this movie is Luca plus Turning Red plus The Little Mermaid all mixed together. Now, if you're not familiar with these three movies, I feel like I should fill you in so you understand what they've done here. See, Luca is a movie about two sea monster boys who want to live a refined yet ordinary human life in 1960s Italy. And it may or may not have been a gay allegory. I don't know. I didn't think it was a gay allegory, but then after the fact, everyone told me that it was a very gay allegory and that sea monster was just a code word for gay people. But I didn't see it that way. I thought the one kid and the redhead were going to get together. Okay, look, I'm not gay, so I don't know what a gay movie is, but maybe this was a gay movie. Anyway, then we come to 2022's Turning Red, and pretty much this was a very on-the-nose allegory for a woman's puberty cycle, where a Chinese girl in Toronto discovered that she is the last in a long line of panda woman warrior monsters. And so drama ensues when Maylin, the normal girl, decides to use her paranormal panda powers for monetary gain. Despite the wishes of her wise and overreactive mom that the powers must be kept a secret, yes, I don't know, she'd be sold into like slavery or like captured by the government. Anyway, the mom in this movie had a lot going on. She was sort of the villain, sort of right, and she had a dad too, but the dad didn't do shit in this movie. Anyway, then finally The Little Mermaid. Now, Disney remade The Little Mermaid, and when they remade it, they added Awkwafina as a rapping cursing seagull, and that was not good in my opinion. Completely ignoring that and completely ignoring that a lot of rednecks were pissed that it now contained a woman of color. There's a lot I could say and could not say about The Little Mermaid, and honestly, I don't want to. It's a movie for little girls, and it's just as lame as it ever was. It was a movie for little girls in the 80s, and it's a movie for little girls now. and somehow the live action one was twice as long as the animated movie, and yet they literally added nothing to make the story better or more interesting. Anyway, just watch the animated version if you give a damn. But yeah, put that all together and you get Ruby Gillman. Now, Ruby Gillman is the story of the sea monster who lives in the human world, who wants to live a normal life in this weird seaside town. She has a dad and a mom and a brother who are all sea monsters, but upon reaching her teenage years, she falls in the ocean and discovers she's actually a horrible sea monster. Body horror ensues, and she is unable to control this transformation at first, but then she finds out that she is from a lineage of female god-woman sea monsters that protect the world from evil mermaids, but her mom gave that up to do a normal life and be a real estate person. And yeah, the leader of those evil mermaids returns and is pretty much the Little Mermaid, but she's evil. And yeah, if you're not paying attention, that's just the same as the movies I just mentioned. And it's a lot like Turning Red, but it's also sea monsters like Luca, and also the Little Mermaid is there being evil. Yeah, so it's got the same mother-daughter trope from Turning Red. I would say, comparing Turning Red to Ruby Gillman, that both movies offer their own unique flavor of mother-daughter drama conflict. Turning Red was a more personal story about the conflict between the mother and the daughter, whereas Ruby Gillman is more of an existential story where they have to team up and fight a common enemy, which is a little bit more interesting. Although it is kind of funny that because both movies are about the same thing, they both have the exact same flaws. And that is that both movies managed to make the moms way more interesting than the protagonist's daughter. Go figure. In both Turning Red and Ruby Gillman, the mom just got way more character development and way more unfulfilled interest. Anyway, yeah, so literally it's all these movies put together in a blender, but it's also kind of its own thing, whether that's sarcastic or not. Okay, so now let me go quickly over the story of Ruby Gillman as its own thing, for better or worse. Ruby lives in this little seaside town. Her only dream in life is to go to prom and be a normal kid. But one day, the boy she likes falls in the ocean, and she has to rescue him. However, rescuing him makes her come in contact with the ocean, which causes her to uncontrollably turn into a sea monster. After that, her family tells her the truth that she's actually a sea monster. Her uncle arrives and takes her to her grandmother, who is the queen of the sea monsters, and trains her to use her sea monster powers, which include laser eyes. Things seem to be going very well, but then the evil mermaid shows up, and despite being warned by her family multiple times that the mermaid is very evil, the mermaid becomes friends with Ruby, and Ruby goes along with it because the mermaid is just really cool, and Ruby just wants to be cool. Ruby has friends originally, but she scorns them because they just weren't cool enough. Anyway, that's what happens in the movie. Eventually, the evil mermaid reveals, bum, she was evil all along. But then there's an added second level twist that the evil mermaid is not only a teenage girl, but actually an immortal evil queen who has waged war for eons against Ruby's grandmother and mother. And yeah, okay, so that's the movie's twist. And yeah, I don't think that's a bad twist, actually. In fact, it's actually a pretty interesting twist. And the more you think about it, actually, the more darker and disturbing you get, because technically, this was an adult woman convincing a teenage girl to ruin and sabotage her own family. And this shit has actually happened in the real world with devastating and deadly consequences. So yeah, bravo movie. Way to include some real world drama in there. Anyway, so yeah, they team up to defeat the mermaid in a giant kaiju battle. The mermaid becomes a giant kaiju. Her whole family becomes giant monsters to fight the mermaid. And yeah, they beat her, they give her to an old dirty man, and happy ending, all the characters dancing. All right, so this is neither the best nor worst movie ever made. Now, let me quickly address some of the problems in it. Probably the worst thing about the movie is the music. The soundtrack is just abysmal. It's pretty much bad all the way through. There is only one part where the music made me laugh. There's like this one sequence where the sea captain is trying to like catch the sea monsters, and they set it to like some old Christopher Cross music. I thought that was pretty funny, but otherwise, all the other music in the movie is completely forgettable random shit from like whenever. Nothing is outright horrible, but yeah, only the Christopher Cross scene I would describe as good. Okay, so that's that. Another big problem in this movie, maybe the biggest strength, but also the biggest weakness, is the film's art style. Now, the art style here is kind of very similar to Genndy Tartakovsky's work. It's very toony, but also 3D. It kind of reminds me of like the Hotel Transylvania movies, and it gives Ruby and her sea monster family these really fun rubber hose designs, which are really entertaining to look at. And I think that works really well for them because they're fundamentally these boneless sea monsters. Unfortunately, this art style is also extended to all the normal people in town, and for all the normal people in town, I don't feel like it works. I don't like it as much on them. I feel like it should have only been used on Ruby's family to make them look like weird standout sea monsters. Using it on everyone in town makes the movie seem a little bit overstyled and a little bit too overall just crazy. And speaking of crazy, I don't know what the hell the setting of the film is. The setting of the film is just weird. Now, at first look, it's this fabulous oceanside town, but the town doesn't make sense. I can't place this town. Is this supposed to be like Seattle, Korea, Connecticut? This town is running on some like weird video game architecture. This town looks like Splatoon and the Oil Ocean Zone from Sonic. This town makes no fucking sense. I do not know what this town is. Anyway, the last thing that really displeased me the most visually about this movie is the monster designs in the film. So, like I said, everything has sort of a cute Gendy Tartakovsky style where everything's like simplified and everything's got like kitty happy faces. But then when Ruby and her family turn into these giant monsters, they literally have the same design except they're gigantic and they're like these giant naked three-legged monsters. But then they also have these like kind of like grody, rusty, crusty monster textures on top. And honestly, I'm not digging it. They look gross. It like really reminds me of that meme of like HD Mario where they took Mario and like replaced all his video game textures with like high resolution photo textures until he looked like some guy strung out on drugs. Anyway, that's basically what this whole movie is like when it comes to the monster fights. But yeah, that bothered me a lot because it just kind of made like the monsters look unpleasant. Anyway, I guess we can kind of wish the monster forms had been a little bit more outright monstrous, but I feel like they had to still be like cute and recognizable so you could sell this shit to babies. But I don't know, it rubbed me the wrong way because it just felt like Ruby was just like ripping off her clothes all the time. Anyway, like I said, this movie is like very derivative of Turning Red, Luca and the Little Mermaid. I guess if you need a reason why it bombed, I would also blame those movies because it's pretty much those movies all over again. Like, and those movies that just come out, like, sure, Luca and Turning Red never got a theatrical release because of the pandemic, so Ruby had an advantage over them in that area. But it's still not cool for a movie to come out that just straight up apes on other movies when it's not doing enough original on its own accord. So maybe that's why it bombed. It also kind of fed into this narrative that people don't want new movies, but then like literally 2 weeks later after it came out, Barbie and Oppenheimer came out. So maybe the actual takeaway here is that people won't bring their kids to brand new movies. You know, maybe that's the real problems. Anyway, despite all that, I liked Ruby Gillman, so I'm going to be sad if I never see her again. DreamWorks has been pretty hardcore on the franchise machine lately with all their sequels and TV shows and water parks. But despite that, yeah, I don't think Ruby Gillman did good enough to ever come back, and that's a shame. I feel like, if anything, like, this movie did do a good job, like, introducing these characters and introducing this world. It was just way too derivative of other movies that were out already, so I don't know. I think that's the best I can say about it. What did you guys think? Am I being too generous here? Or maybe this was just a knockoff film that was trying too hard to copy Disney. So let me know what you think in the comments and let me know, did you like this movie? Did you hate it? Did you even see it? Anyway, it's on Netflix, so that's how I saw it. All right, later guys. Good night.